is the 26th. I'm correct, 26th of March. And what we're doing today, we're going to go down because 4 days ago, there was an atrocity that happened here at in London, down at Westminster. And it was a Khalid Masood, a Muslim of 52 years age. He ran his car across Westminster Bridge, knocking people right, left, and center, killing 3 people there on the bridge itself, crashing into the railing right there next to Big Ben and actually pinning 3 policemen there, jumping out of the car, running around the corner and going into the gate to where all the cars go into Parliament and killing a PC.
Yep.
And then him being killed as well by 2 detectives. Am I correct, Alistair?
So in total,
MP
5. Five.
So
As we know, the latest is 50 were injured and 5 were killed, including Khalid Masood.
Including him as well. Now, that everybody knows. That's what everybody knows.
Yes.
And we're not here just to repeat what everybody knows. What we're going to do now, you can see Speaker's Corner is behind us here. Speaker's Corner is where we're going to go to, and we're going to unpack who this man was.
Yes.
What was his motivation?
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to ask what his motivation, and what we've heard so far, he's a criminal, he was a man with a temper, he had problems with women, he was a what is that called?
Jack the Lad.
Jack the Lad, he loved women, women loved him, all that. That's what we're being told. They're trying to find out for all kinds of reasons. We do know, however, that he was converted in 2003, and that was the last time he was in prison, and he was converted in prison.
They tried to find rational explanations for why he did this without touching Islam, of course, in the media.
We're going to get up on the ladder. We're going to talk about those years.
Yes.
So, really 14 years between 2003 and 2017.
Yeah.
And we're going to find out what we think happened, and also see how the Muslims react.
Yes.
Now, we're going to get lots of calls. People are going to call us Islamophobic.
Absolutely.
They're going to call us haters. They're going to call us Nazis, extremists, disunifiers, that we should be having unity today, not separation, which is understandable.
Yeah.
No one wants to talk about the roots of this problem. No one wants to ask Islam really why Muslims are doing this.
Absolutely. It's what is called in the scholarly world an inconvenient truth, where it's inconvenient to hear an ideology not be peaceful from this political correctness kind of world we have.
And if you're going to ask it, you might as well do it here, because
Yeah.
this is the one place we can do it, at Speaker's Corner. So that's what we're going to do. We're now going to go over there. We're going to put up our ladders. This is Alistair's first time on a ladder, and he and I are going to unpack this and try to come to some type of conclusions. And we're going to ask Muslims as we go, why do they think Khalid Masood did what he did 4 days ago? So,
Absolutely.
come with us. Let's head on out there, and let's see what we find. All right, folks, today, this is the first Sunday after the atrocities that happened on Wednesday. I've been going around to the different groups to see if people are talking about Khalid Masood, are talking about what happened at Westminster. Nobody's talking about it. And I would like to know why people are not talking what happened just 4 days ago here in London. Because I'm angry. Are you angry? See, he's not angry. The Muslim here is not angry. We should all be angry with what happened last Wednesday. The one place we should be able to talk about it is Speaker's Corner. Am I correct? So I want to talk about it. I'm not going to tell you what happened. You all know what happened. One man wounded 50 people and killed 4 innocent people. One man, 52 years old, Khalid Masood, a Muslim. And we are going to ask why. He asked. Here we go already. There's denial, Alistair.
Yes.
How many here believe he was a Muslim? How many believe he was not a Muslim? So the Muslims are saying he wasn't a Muslim. Now here's the problem, Alistair.
Yeah.
We're going to see denial today. We're going to see people calling us Islamophobic. We're going to see people saying that we're hatred. We do not hate Muslims, do we?
No.
Do you love this man?
I love this man.
I love you too. Do you love me?
You are a liar.
I love you.
You are a liar.
Am I a liar?
No.
Do I love Muslims?
Yes.
Have I said this every week?
Yes.
Every week we love Muslims. Why do we love Muslims, Alistair?
As Christians, it's our duty to love everyone, to love thy enemy.
Because Jesus said so.
Exactly. In Matthew 5:38, it is to
43 and 44.
43 and
Matthew
44.
5, verse 33 and 44. He says, we are to love our enemies. Do you see Christians driving cars into people? No. Taking out knives and stabbing officers? Can you show me? Can you show me where that's happened here?
Germany.
And do they do it for Jesus Christ?
Germany.
Does Jesus say we can kill people?
no.
Does Jesus say we are to love our enemies?
Yes.
Can you then see why Khalid Masood was not a Christian? But hold on a minute. He was a Christian at one time.
Yes, he was.
He did grow up in a Christian family.
Yes, he did.
Until 2003, something happened in 2003. He became a Muslim in 2003 while he was in prison. He changed his name from Trevor to Khalid Masood.
Yes.
He was not circumcised.
He became Khalid Masood actually in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Did he not?
Yes. Trevor was one of his aliases. What his actual birth name was Adrian Russell Ajao.
Adrian Russell Ajao. It's a Nigerian name.
Yes.
We don't know who his father was, but we know his stepfather was a Nigerian. His mother was an English woman, a white English woman. So he grew up in a white neighborhood, did he not?
Yes, he did.
In Kent.
Yes.
In Tunbridge Wells. If you look at the pictures of him in Tunbridge Wells, he was the only black man amongst an entire school of white people. So he grew up amongst white people.
Yes, he was a minority.
He was a problem child, was he not?
Yes, he was.
He did have an anger issue. We're not denying that. He also was in jail.
Yes, he was.
We're not denying that. The last time he was in jail was in 2003. Has he been in jail since 2003?
No.
No, he hasn't. Has he done any criminal activity since 2003?
Yes.
No.
What?
The police declared that he was caught in 3 occasions.
And since 2003?
Yeah, 3 times.
They were all before 2003.
Absolutely.
Since 2003, that's 14 years, he has not been in trouble with the law, right?
No. 2003 was his last criminal charge, where he was charged for assault.
He was put in prison in 2003, was he not?
Yes, he was.
He became a Muslim in 2003.
Yes, he did.
So for 14 years, he has now been a Muslim, right?
Yes.
How do you know?
How do we know?
How do we know?
How do you know
I just made it up. That's right. I
Yeah.
just made it up.
Yeah.
Khalid Masood must be a Christian name.
Yeah.
I forgot. Khalid Masood is a Christian name.
How could you forget, Jay?
That's a new name.
How
I
could
didn't
you
know
forget?
that.
Yeah.
So now let's continue on. Then
Why don't you listen?
he is now 50, or he was 52 years old
When he died.
when he died on Wednesday, and he rammed that car, knocking 50 people, wounding them, killing 3.
On the bridge.
Actually aimed for 3 policemen and pinned them up against the fence.
Absolutely. When he crashed his car, his rented car, into the bridge.
So he was attacking the police at that time.
Yes.
He jumped out of the car, ran around the corner, went into the only place in all of Westminster that was unguarded.
The driveway in Westminster.
It's the only place where there were no guns. How did he know that?
I want to say something.
Have you all heard this?
I want to say something.
The one place that was unguarded, there were no guns there.
American just
Every other entrance has guns, does it not?
Yes, it does.
Except where the cars go in.
Yes.
And where the vans go in.
Yes.
And where the MPs go in.
And Jay, obviously you can see how silly that is. Where the most amount of people go through that entrance, there are no armed guards. In Parliament, in Westminster, how could there be no armed guards in the most used entrance in Westminster?
And what did he do? He attacked the first guard, the first policeman, who was unarmed. The other policeman was unarmed. So how did he get killed?
One of the armed protectors of MP Fallon.
MP Fallon, who by chance happened to be there. They weren't supposed to be there, were they?
No.
They were
by
not
chance.
part of the guards of Parliament.
No, they weren't.
They were coming out with Fallon.
They were assigned to Fallon alone.
They were to protect Fallon. They just by chance happened to be there.
Absolutely.
And they killed Khalid Masood, did they not?
Yes, they did.
Had they not been there, what would have happened?
He would have entered into Westminster with his knives. He had a meat cleaver and he had a buck
So
knife.
he had two knives. One was a hunting knife.
Yes.
And the other was much thicker. It was a meat cleaver.
It was a meat cleaver.
What did he want to use the meat cleaver for?
He wanted to butcher the MPs for whatever reasons. We don't know. But he wanted to go inside and attack, butcher the MPs.
Okay, now we know that this happened before, didn't we?
Yes.
In 2013, we had another killing here in London, did we not?
Yes, we did.
Michael Adibalajo. Do you remember that name? Remember Michael Adibalajo? He also was a Nigerian, was he not?
Yes, he was.
He grew up here in Romford, in London, did he not?
Yes, he did. He grew up in a
He was a
Pentecostal.
Pentecostal Christian, was
Yes,
he
he
not?
was.
He went to church every Sunday, did he not?
Yes, he did.
Until 2003, the very same year, 2003. What did Michael Adibalajo do in 2003?
He converted to Islam.
Under whose auspices, under whose tutelage did he convert?
And Jim Chowdhury.
Well, it was actually Sheikh Omar Bakri Muhammad. Sheikh Omar Bakri Muhammad, who was in charge of Anjem Chowdhury. They were the leaders of the Muhajirun Party, the most radical group here in Britain, and have always been the most radical group here in Britain. Now, let's continue. What did Michael Adibalajo do 10 years later in 2013?
What do you have to say about that?
He also used the car as well.
Exactly.
He also used the car. Are you seeing the parallels? He ducked over and wounded Gunner Rigby.
Lee Rigby.
Lee Rigby. And then what did he do next? He jumped out of the car
To butcher him.
and he took the knife and he stabbed him.
Yeah.
And then he took the butcher knife and tried to cut off his head. Are you seeing the parallels, folks? Are you picking up the parallels? Both of them were converted to Islam in 2003. One did his butchering in 2013. It was all over the news, right?
Yes.
The other one did his butchering in 2017. That's 14 years later. Now, here's what I want to ask. What is the media doing with this information? What are the people here in Britain doing with this information?
Mr. Speaker.
I honestly do not know. I don't hear anything about this.
What do they say is the motivation for this man?
They'll say it is a mental illness. They'll say they're crazy. They'll say they were brought up wrong. They were a minority. They were disenfranchised, and therefore
He's a criminal.
he's a criminal.
He had a temper.
He had a temper.
He lost his temper.
Yeah.
He used a knife before.
Exactly.
This is what they're saying.
Exactly.
You have an American accent. I have a question for you.
Or is it about this?
Yes?
Go ahead quickly.
Very shortly, 2 weeks ago, there were more than 200 Muslims killed in America. As an American atheist, what do you have to say about that?
What 200 Muslims were killed in America?
Jay, he's talking about the 230 in Mosul in Iraq.
Oh, in Iraq. Okay.
This is what the
So you're changing the subject. You see, you don't want us to continue with this subject. Do you want to change the subject, folks? Okay, let's continue on.
continue.
This is a normal tactic. Muslims do this every week. Let's change the subject. Let's get off this. This is too embarrassing. We don't want you to know what we're saying. So now let's come back to this man here, Khalid Masood.
Yeah.
So Khalid Masood in 2017, he then killed these 4 people with a knife.
With a knife.
Like Michael Adibalajo.
Yes.
When Michael Adibalajo did this, he handed a piece of paper to those who were onlookers.
Yes.
Have you seen that piece of paper?
Yes, I have.
It was brought up after his trial.
Yes, I have.
What was on that piece of paper?
There was justification. There were verses he used from the Quran to justify what he did on that day.
So it was written to his son.
Yes.
And it talked about verse after verse after verse of why he killed Lee Rigby.
Absolutely.
Were those verses from the Bible?
No.
Were those verses from the Quran?
Absolutely.
These were Quranic verses.
Absolutely. These were Quranic verses that he used to justify his actions when he killed Lee Rigby in cold blood.
And we've already done that. You can go up on YouTube, go up on Pfander Films, and you will see. We unpacked that already back in 2013, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So that happened 4 years ago. almost 4 years ago. We're now in 2017, and yet again, we've got to talk about another killing here in London, done with knives, done with a car, and all in the name of Islam. Now, I want to ask you, what were the verses that Michael Adebalaljo went to? What were the verses that supported what both Michael Adebalaljo did and also what Khalid Masood did? Do you know some of these verses?
I believe one, Surah 9, Ayah 5.
Most of them are in Surah 9.
Yeah.
Now, why is Surah 9 so important? It's the last surah that was revealed to Muhammad the year he died in 632. So why does that make that surah so important?
Because it's from the beginning of Muhammad's life, he was more peaceful, and towards the end of his life, he was more violent. So
Okay.
we understand that Surah 9 was the most violent
most
chapter.
authoritative.
Most authoritative and most violent in the
It
Quran.
turns out to be the most violent. You're correct. But for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, when Muhammad was in Mecca, he supposedly, and most likely, he was a peaceful man. He was a minority. He had no authority. He had no control. So therefore, the verses you see there tend to be peaceful verses, right?
Absolutely, yes.
When he moved to Medina in 622, everything changed. And by 624, he started using the sword. And you see the Battle of Badr. See if I'm lying. I could be lying. You go and see what happened in 624 at the Battle of Badr. In 625, he went to the Battle of Uhud. He lost that battle. By 627, he went to the Battle of the Trenches. 3 great battles within 5 years of moving to Medina. Once he had destroyed the Jews, thrown out all the Jews, took 800 Jews and cut their throats in one afternoon. In 627, he had no more opposition. There were no more Jews to oppose him. And from that time on, he was involved in 29 battle campaigns and planned another 39 on top of that. Now, where do I get this from?
You don't make it up, Jay. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, where is the sources for what I've just told you?
You can look at the Quran. You can look at the Hadith. You can look at the traditions.
You need to go to the Siratul Rasulullah, written by Ibn Hisham. You need to go to the Sirah, written by Al-Waqidi. You need to go to the Sirah, written by Ibn Ishaq. You need to go to the Hadith, written by Al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Dawdi, Tirmidhi, Dawda. You need to also go to the Tafsir, written by Tabari. Now, I've given you 5 different sources from 3 different genres. They all talk about these events. They all talk about what Muhammad did in Medina between 622 and 627. The first 5 years he was in Medina, he destroyed the Jews that were there that stood against him.
Absolutely.
So that there were no more Jewish tribes that could stand against him by 627. If this is the model for Islam, which it is for every Muslim here, can you then see why Khalid Masood is now following that model?
Absolutely. According to the Quran, he is absolutely justified in his actions. If you look to the verses, if you look to the verses, the violent verses, he could have seen, he is absolutely justified in what he did on last Wednesday.
Now, what we do, Alistair, your first time on the ladder, you're doing a great job. We don't sit here and just sit and criticize Muslims. We're not here to do that.
No, we don't.
We want to find out why they do what they do.
Absolutely.
What is the motivation for their actions? And to do that, we go back to their authority. And which are the authority we go to?
The Quran.
The Quran, number one. Why the Quran, number one?
The Quran is the most reliable source for Muslims to what is it to be a Muslim. You have to go back to the Quran.
It sounds like you believe in the Quran, and it sounds like you believe in the Prophet. I'm Muslim.
Here we go. We don't believe in the Quran or the Prophet,
No, we don't.
But Muslims do.
Yes.
So we've got to go back to the Quran, right?
We have to.
We've got to go back and see why Khalid Masood did what he did.
Absolutely.
So we need to go to the Quran, will you not?
Yes, we do.
So let's start with the Quran. Let's go back to those verses. As the Muslim leads, he doesn't want to hear this. We're going to use his authority. Give me some verses that support what Khalid Masood did on Wednesday.
Well, I can give you Surah 9:29 to begin with.
Okay, Surah 9:29 is against people of the book. That means people like me, people who are Christians, people who are Jews, people who are, well, as it says, the Al-Kitab.
Yeah.
What is it that Muslims are to do with us, the Al-Kitab, the Christians and the Jews?
To fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day.
I don't believe in Allah.
I don't believe in
And
Allah.
I don't believe in the Islamic last days.
Neither do I.
Nor the Quranic ones. So that's me. Continue on.
Nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and his messenger.
Okay, I don't follow his messenger. That may
Neither
be
do I.
Muhammad, I assume.
Absolutely.
So I refuse to follow Muhammad. So what are Muslims to do with me if I don't believe in Allah, I don't believe in their last days, and I don't believe in their messenger? Them and then do what? Pay the jizya tax.
Yes.
So they're to fight us, or that we can pay the jizya tax.
Yes.
That means the tax that's only for Christians and Jews.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay the jizya tax. So what's going to happen to me?
You are going to be killed, or you can flee, but most likely you're going to be killed.
Okay, well, give me another verse now.
Okay, well, Surah 9:73. O Prophet, strive hard against the unbelievers. That's me, that's Jay, and the hypocrites, and be firm against them. Their abode is hell.
Okay, I would suggest that's not you and me. That is those are the unbelievers who would be the idolaters. Okay, we're people of the book. We are actually given a different level than the unbelievers. So those are those like the idolaters, anybody who did not believe in any God. We do believe in God.
We believe in God.
But not the same God. What else do you have?
Surah 9:1-3. O ye who believe, fight the unbelievers who gird you about, and let them find firmness in you, and know that Allah is with those
fight
who
the
fear Him.
unbelievers again. Here it comes again.
Yep.
The unbelievers are those who are the idolaters, the pagans. Go on.
Allah hath purchased of the believers their persons and their goods, for theirs in return is the garden of paradise. They fight in His cause and slay and are slain.
Okay, here we have the believers who are going to have paradise, according to the Quran. They are slain and they do slay. Both they do slay and they're slain, right? It goes and comes. Okay, what else? And what's their reward?
Paradise.
How do you know that?
Jihadism.
Where do you see that? Surah 47.
Surah 47, I'm about to read it. Surah 47, 4-6. So when you meet those who disbelieve, smite their necks. And what does smite mean, Jay?
Well, cut off their necks.
Cut off their necks.
Use a sword, cut off their necks. Here is the verse that Adibalajo used.
Yes.
Michael Adibalajo used. Here is the verse that Jihadi John used with ISIS. And this would be the verse that Khalid Masood would have used.
Absolutely.
Because what and who are the unbelievers? Look at the first three verses. Surah 47, Ayah 1, Ayah 2, Ayah 3. What is it that those three verses say? And who do they define?
Talk about today, bro.
We're talking about today.
Talk about Jimmy Savile.
We're talking
How
about
many women did he
today.
rape? And the
See what's
BBC
happened just 4 days ago.
the other way.
And this
How
is the
many
man that
children-
doesn't want us
He
to
has
talk
the
about
keys.
it. He is scared to death because we're using his own Quran.
Absolutely.
Because the first three verses, verse 1,
Talk
verse
about
2,
today.
and verse 3,
Talk
talk
about
about
Jimmy
who a
Savile.
believer is and who
How
an
many
unbeliever is,
children
right?
rape? Why do you
And
talk
then
about
verse
that?
4 says, this is
Stop.
what you're to do to the unbeliever.
Yes.
And what is it they're to do?
They smite their necks till when you have killed and wounded many of them.
So cut off their heads, so that when you have wounded many of them, by that time they're already dead.
Absolutely.
Then there's going to be a war.
Absolutely.
And then what does it say in verse 6?
It says, but those who are killed in the way of Allah, He will never let their deeds be lost and admit them to paradise.
So there it is, folks. If you die while you're smiting off the heads, if you die in jihad, you're going straight to heaven. There's the promise of paradise.
Yeah.
There is no assurance of salvation in Islam, is there? Except for that
jihad.
verse.
Yes.
Surah 47, Ayah 6 says, anybody who dies in the cause of Allah, you will go straight to paradise.
A one-way ticket, Jay.
That is not me saying that.
No.
That is not you saying that.
It is not me.
Where did we read that?
I am quoting from Surah 47, verse 6.
That's the Quran.
That's the Quran.
This is holy edict for a Muslim.
Absolutely.
Can you understand why someone like Khalid Masood, who really his whole life was being shot to pieces, everything he did seemed to end in failure, did it not?
Yes.
It looks like he did not have good luck with women. Looks like he went through 3 women. Looks like one of his daughters became very westernized.
Yes.
Another one became very Islamic.
Yes, a very split family.
By the time he was 52, he was already on using welfare. He already had many aliases, using many different names.
Absolutely. We think he might have had about 5 aliases and claiming benefits from each alias.
So here was a man that had no future.
No.
And when you have no future, where are you going to go when you feel hopeless? Where do you go when you feel helpless?
I don't know, Jay. Where do people go?
You go home. You go back to your scriptures. You go back to your God. You go back to these verses. You go back and see what Muhammad did to those who made him feel helpless. What Muhammad did to those who made him feel hopeless. When Muhammad was threatened, how did he respond?
Oh, he didn't respond with peace. He did not respond with love like Jesus did. He, in fact, responded with violence, especially in Medina. He responded with violence and torture and absolute horrible things.
So here you go, Alistair. When you feel weak,
yes.
When you feel helpless,
yes.
As many people are noticing about Khalid Masood,
yes.
They're showing that. It looks like he went back to his scriptures. It looks like he did what Michael Adibalazo did 4 years ago.
That is pretty much the only explanation we can give, Jay.
That's the only explanation we can find.
With a
now,
man,
Alistair,
yeah.
You feel weak many times, don't you?
I do.
You feel helpless many times, don't you?
I do.
You feel hopeless many times, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And where do you go when you feel helpless?
I go back to my scripture. I go back to Jesus.
You go back to Jesus Christ. And what does Jesus Christ say when you're hopeless and you're helpless and you're weak? What does he say you must do?
He says to trust in me because I am your Lord.
Does Jesus ever say to pick up the sword and to kill people?
No.
What does Jesus say about the sword? Matthew chapter 26. Oh, I love Matthew 26. There is Jesus. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and there is Peter who comes and he uses a sword like Michael Adibalazo did, certainly like Khalid Masood did. He used a similar kind of sword, and he cut off the ear of the servant to protect Jesus, saying, I want to protect you. And what did Jesus say? Put away it.
Put away your sword.
Put away the sword. Peter, I don't need the sword. For he who lives by the sword
dies by the sword.
Dies by the sword. What a paradigm for today. See, when we feel weak, when we feel hopeless, when we feel helpless, we don't go to violence. We don't need violence. That's why you don't see Christians with swords killing people in the name of their God.
Look at history.
Our God will not allow us to use the sword.
Absolutely.
Not for his kingdom.
No.
How many they killed?
Murder is a sin. It is made plainly clear. Thou shalt not murder. And that's it. There is no but. There is no, oh, it was at that time of battle in Islam, in Surah 9, Ayah 5. It was for that time and place. There is no allowance for murder. And that is it. That is it. Jesus does not allow murder. Put away your sword, for he who lives by the sword dies by the sword.
Now, Jesus did say that there is such a thing as the state. And the state can go to war, can it not?
Yes.
Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Give to God what belongs to God. He separated church and state.
Yes.
And the state can go to war. Even Romans 13 says that we must support the state. But the church does not go to war. No, we don't go to war.
No, we don't.
As Christians for God.
No.
And every time that anybody goes to war for God, like the Crusades, I condemn them.
Absolutely.
We condemn them because Jesus would have condemned them. But how can you, a Muslim, condemn them? Because your prophet did that. They're in Medina with the Jews. If you're going to condemn the Crusades, I want you to condemn Muhammad right now. Because of what he did to the Jews in Medina.
No, it wasn't him.
It wasn't him, he says. Read your own tradition.
I'm sorry, you can't
It was
help.
him.
You can't help it.
There we go. Now let's ask you something. So we've seen what Khalid Masood did on Wednesday. We've looked at scripture to see where it supports it. We've looked at the example of Muhammad as the model for it. And we've come back to Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
We looked at Jesus Christ, who was, yes, here's a sword that was used to protect him, and he wouldn't even let them use the sword. I'm glad the Muslims are clapping, because Jesus really is the model for today. We love Jesus, don't we?
We love Jesus.
Do you love Jesus?
Yes.
Do you really love him?
Yes.
Is he the model for today?
Absolutely.
Do you want peace?
Yes.
Is he the man of peace?
Yes.
Is he the God of peace?
Yes.
Is he your man? Who is the King of Kings?
Jesus.
Who is the Lord of Lords?
Jesus.
Who is God in heaven?
Jesus.
Who
Jesus.
Who then rose again?
Jesus.
Who now is in heaven?
Jesus.
Who is waiting for you and me?
Jesus.
What's his name?
Jesus.
What's his name?
Jesus.
Can't hear you.
Jesus.
Oh, I love that name. God bless you. Your first time on the line.
Yeah. All right.
Folks, we'll see you again. Did you see? If you want to know the motivation, go back to the book and the man.
Yes.
The book of the man. We have a book and a man too, but a bigger book and a bigger man. And
A better man and a better book.
A better book and a bigger man.
There you go.
God bless you.
Keep
God bless you.
fighting, man. Don't shake his hand.